Joining me now, Georgia Democratic State Representative and House Minority Leader Stacey Abrams. And Representative Abrams, if you were Michelle Nunn, and I guess we haven't quite declared her the victor yet as far as I can tell from AP, but if you were Michelle Nunn, who is a prohibitive favorite in that to be the nominee, who would you want to see in this runoff among her possible Republican opponents?
Well, thank you for having me tonight, Chris. I actually don't think it matters. What Paul Brown, the Tea Party favorite, has managed to do is drag every single one of those candidates so hard to the right. They all come out of this primary looking very extreme, and it's only going to get worse during the 2-month runoff.
You know, Paul Brown and Phil Gingrey, who are two very conservative Republican members of Congress who are in that primary, they have not, according to the latest polling, fared particularly well. How do you make sense of that? How do you make sense of the fact that these, quote, so-called establishment candidates, Jack Kingston, who's a longtime member of Congress, David Perdue, who's a businessman and brother, I believe, former governor, and Karen Handel, that the three of them have emerged at the front of the pack?
I think the fact is that they've spent the most money. This is a primary that's going to spend a lot per voter. And I think your numbers say about 600,000 Republicans will vote, and roughly $5 to $7 million have been spent trying to buy each one of those votes. And so I think that the reality is Paul Brown, while having a grassroots appeal, didn't have the cash. David Perdue could self-fund. Jack Kingston was supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And Karen Handel was able to capitalize on some very strong support from Sarah Palin and other Tea Party groups.
When you look at this math, obviously that there's a very contested primary on the Republican side, but you've got to be thinking to yourself, okay, what does turnout look like? Obviously, I imagine you're up in the fall, as are your fellow members in the legislature. Who is going to be coming out? What Democrats are going to be coming out to Georgia? What number of them, what percentage of them do you need to come out for someone like Michelle Nunn or perhaps Jason Carter or anyone else to have a shot statewide or even in contested races in the state legislature?
I think what we need is the highest turnout we can generate, which is certainly, 52% of the electorate is Democratic. That's fantastic. But I don't think we actually need a plurality of Democrats to win. I think the Republican extremism will convert a number of moderate-leaning Republicans in Michelle's favor. I think on top of that, you have excitement at the top of the ticket with Michelle Nunn, with Jason Carter, with contested races where we're going to run really strong candidates. What you're going to find is renewed optimism among Democrats. What it takes to win is a belief that it's possible, and I think 2014 has turned into one of those years for Democrats.
Michelle Nunn has been asked a number of times, she's asked by my colleague Casey Hunt about whether she would have voted for the Affordable Care Act. She hasn't given a sort of straightforward yes or no answer, and it is a little bit of a counterfactual question. But is she being too cute by half about where she stands with respect to Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act?
Absolutely not. Michelle has been very clear that she believes we have to solve our health care crisis. She believes we need to expand Medicaid. But like every reasonable Democrat, she understands that no law is perfect when it's passed, and what she would do as a U.S. Senator is fix the pieces that aren't working, but keep pursuing the pieces that are sharp. And I think what she's demonstrated is a willingness to be thoughtful, to not give a pandering answer on one side or the other, but to really say that she's going there to fix the problems for Georgia. And I think that's the kind of senator that we want.
Jack Kingston, David Perdue, Karen Handel, and the rest of the field, is there anyone in that primary that might emerge tonight that favors Medicaid expansion for the hundreds of thousands of Georgians that would benefit from it?
I think it's a sad day, but absolutely not. Although I think David Perdue has said he'd said prior to becoming a candidate that he believed that there was a federal solution to health care. I think Jack Kingston, despite representing most of the military bases in Georgia and knowing better, and despite having Karen Handel, who served one of the poorest communities in the state when she was at the head of Fulton County, they each understand that the working poor, that veterans, that Georgia requires health care expansion, that rural hospitals are going to fail without this money. But I think none of them will have the political courage to say that the truth is we need to accept the money that Georgians have already paid into the system and get that money back so we can grow Georgia and put Georgia back to work.
This is a state in which the issue of Medicaid expansion was sort of treated by a political football by the Republican governor, Nathan Deal, who voluntarily gave up the power to do it himself, giving it to the legislature, so in some ways he wouldn't have to take a position ultimately on whether he wanted to or not, which suggests to me that there's an opportunity to make political ground running on precisely that in a statewide race.
Absolutely. And what I favor about both Michelle and Jason is that they've stood foursquare in favor of Medicaid expansion. They understand that we've got 25,000 veterans in Georgia that will lose access to health care. They understand that we have 15 hospitals that could possibly shut down, and those hospitals represent up to 30% of the workforce in a county.
Georgia State Representative.
And so I believe what we will know at the end of the day and on July 22nd is that Democrats are going to win 2014 and that we're going to win no matter who comes out of that primary.
Georgia State Representative Stacey Abrams, always a pleasure. Thank you.